Hello and welcome to the Alphagenix podcast, where we discuss all things men's health, testosterone, and well-being. I'm Dr. Max, lead clinician at Alphagenix, and today I'm joined by Allison Hill, who is owner and creative director of a candle and skincare company. She also hosts a Fit for Freedom with Ali podcast, and in general, just has a strong presence in the world of health and well-being. How are you? Thank you very much for joining us, Ali. How are you
Thank
doing?
you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I'm doing really well today. It's finally sunny here in the Midwest in the US, and it's a great day, and I'm happy to be here with you.
Yeah, it is. I finally got some nice weather up in the northeast of the UK as well. We've had about 2 weeks of sunshine, so this may be the summer done and dusted after this, but it's been good. It's been a nice change. Yeah.
We got a long way of heat ahead of us here, so we get all the seasons where I live.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking about that just before we started recording. You're based in Illinois, which is sort of where would you describe it again? You could say.
The Midwest is what we
Yeah.
call it, but it's kind of right in the middle of the country. The city most people would potentially be familiar with is St. Louis, which is technically Missouri, but in any event, it's right in the middle of the country, pretty much.
Yeah.
We're in like cornfields. There's some cities, but mostly it's pretty rural. We get all the seasons. It gets super, super cold in the winter, super hot in the summer, and then a little bit of in between, which is what we're at
Yeah.
right now. But it doesn't last
Yeah.
long. It's usually either super hot or ice as everywhere.
Yes, yeah. So you're the kind of the middle point at the moment. How did you tell everybody how you got into this sort of the well-being side of things? Because obviously you've got your own company as well, but how did you get into the sort of well-being and health space?
Yeah. So actually, my company is a smidge of a spinoff because
Mhm.
there's so many home and skin products that have toxins and are hormone disruptors. And so, although that is not exactly my health space, that's kind of a separate thing. It definitely has a layers of, I create things with intention that are safe and healthy and clean for people to consume. But to rewind to the beginning, I've been an athlete my whole life. I started playing pretty competitive sports when I was about 6 or 7. So my whole life I was traveling the US playing sports, specifically softball. I also played volleyball and basketball, but I always had that underlying um, respect for my body and like being able to be productive and efficient with my body. And then through college, I played softball through college. And my degree, kind of by default, was exercise. Exercise physiology is the degree, but like health and human sciences or something. But honestly, I just chose that because I wanted to play and it was the easiest with my schedule and it was the easiest with like my lifestyle. And I had actually planned on going to med school or nursing school. And I know it's like, you can't be a nurse or a doctor. Like, why didn't you know? Well, honestly, I just wanted to be in this setting to help people. And it was more about the logistics for me, like what was going to be easiest and, you know, cheapest. And I ended up actually not continuing on to school because I was pretty passionate about paying off all my student loans. And I got a job that I loved. And so I never pursued more formal education. Any event, I ended up doing cardiac and pulmonary rehab was my first like hospital setting job. So I was helping people after a cardiac event or when they had gotten diagnosed with a pulmonary disease, most commonly COPD. Um, and that's where I really started to put the pieces together of how important lifestyle connects with what's really going on in like diagnoses and how someone feels and their symptom management. What happened was I was just out of college and I was working, I learned all this stuff. Our program is very cardiac focused because they were trying to push people into cardiopulmonary rehab. That was the very much the focus of my university's program.
Mhm.
So I did it and I loved it. And, I was reading EKGs all day. I was taking blood pressures. I was really coaching people through their lifestyle, watching their progression on their exercises. And it's very calculated. I'm not sure how those programs are there versus here, but it's extremely calculated. Like we would take measurements, we would take like even a very loose VO2 max, and we would be monitoring these people through their whole program, which is anywhere between 8 to 15, 16 weeks, sometimes even up to 20 weeks, depending on what the cardiologist ordered. All that to be said, I would be like so proud of these people. Like I knew their grandkids' names, and like I was helping them plan their lunches and dinners, and like I really got to like intimately know these people. And we would do like a little graduation when they finally like passed and they were doing well. You know, I had some guys that they would start their program with us, couldn't walk up a flight of stairs, and then by the time like they're taking the elevator, and by the time they're done, like they're walking to and from their car on the stair, you know, by using the stairs. That's so rewarding to me, and like I just absolutely loved it. But what I noticed was we would be gearing up to their graduation to be done with their like a program, and I'm excited for them. Like this is your new life. Like you know, you're going to be so happy, and you know, you can breathe better. And they're just wanting to know when they can start smoking again. And I'm like, or like when they can go back to their fast food. Like there were so many of like the vast majority, I would say 80+% were in that headspace of like, oh, I did it. So now it's
Yeah.
time for me to get back to my normal routine. And I'm like, wait, did we teach you nothing? and
Yeah.
and it was so defeating to me. And you know, and I really got to know these people and care about them. And I felt for many of them, I was just so disappointed at the end because it was like their attitude was only good to make it through that program. And then it was like they were done. And I don't know, it just left me with such a very disappointed feeling like, wow, we just tried so hard to help you. We used all this research, you know, years of knowledge, years of research to like put into you and fill into you to get you in a better space. And you just are kind of like taking advantage of that. And I don't think they viewed it that way, but that's how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
So all that to be said, I was like, hey, I have to be in a different demographic. Like I have to help people that want to help themselves, because it was just so defeating to me. Like I wanted them to be better way more than they wanted to be better themselves. And I believed in them more than they believed in themselves, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, as much as I just want to like believe I can be the hero here, you can't help people that don't want to be helped. And so some years passed, and I had connected with Amy Stuttle, who's the CEO of Victory Men's Health. And it was very small business at the time, only one location, and then a brand new location. And she's like, hey, I need someone. I think you'd be great. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't, you know, men's health. I'm a young woman. I mean, I was 23 at the time, I think. And, you know, she's explaining the role, and, you know, I'm going to be helping people with their sexual health, weight loss, you know, testosterone. I'm like, I don't know that that's going to land well, but it just, the company is so great and the mission is so great. So I took a chance. She took a chance on me, and I ended up really flourishing in that role. And I was, you know, one of the patient coordinators there for a long time. I recently had just left to focus on my business, but that was the bulk of my wellness experiences with Victory. And so my role there was really just educating people on how their lifestyle, their symptoms, and their labs correlate. You know, of course, we're working with, you know, board certified physicians, PAs, NPs. We had a beautiful team that Victory is just, I mean, one of the best in the world, probably at what they do. But I had so much, I guess, respect for like the, you just have to have such a high regard for that role. Like you are, people are listening to you. They paid for a consult, they invested their money and their time, and they have made a difficult decision to be sitting in front of a stranger talking about their most vulnerable things, and you have to take that responsibility extremely seriously. And I did. And so again, I started when I was in my like early 20s, and I really just had to educate myself. And Amy does a wonderful job of making sure the team is equipped with resources. But, you know, I took it even beyond that. I was listening to podcasts all day, every day. I mean, I was like watching YouTube lectures in the evenings, and on my way home from work, I had almost an hour drive home every day, and I would listen to lectures and case studies. And the reason I did that is because especially going back to the demographic change, a young female talking to mostly retirement age men,
Hmm.
you have to combat that awkwardness and that demographic difference with knowledge. And you cannot not know what you're talking about. Like, you really need to know your shit if you're going to be sitting across from someone giving them advice on something that you've never personally experienced. And so to do that, I just learned and learned and learned and learned and learned. And most people will probably tell you that have worked with me, whether a client or a colleague, that I take education extremely seriously. And if I don't know an answer to something, I will find it. And I will be honest that I don't know the answer. And I will either gear them towards someone who I do know knows the answer, or I will find it out myself and learn about it and become obsessed with it until I can explain it to them. And
Mm.
so that is really kind of the progression of how I came so passionate about health and wellness. I think a lot of it came from kind of ego, like in my role as my job, I didn't want to like look stupid and sound stupid. And so I wanted to learn more to kind of prove a point, but then it more evolved into like genuinely caring about these things. Like, if I really want to help people make progress, I mean, I have to kind of be obsessed with it because the industry is ever changing. There's so much information and there's so many like brilliant educators. One person's way is different than another person's way, and it doesn't mean that either
Yeah.
way is wrong. And so to kind of understand the different styles and the different diet recommendations and how they correlate to diagnoses and how they correlate to uh, weight management goals or whatever, you have to like kind of get bits and pieces of everything and like fully come up with your own opinions, based in data, et cetera, whatever. I could talk about that. But
Yeah.
my point is, that's where it led up to me. And so I really have made myself someone who the things that I know about them. I would rather know everything about a select amount of things than a little bit about a lot of things. I really like, expect myself to be an expert on the things that I choose to speak on. And that is where, I kind of am now. So like I said, I've left Victory in an official capacity. They are growing and doing amazing things. And I still refer people there on a probably daily basis, but I'm focusing on my business now. But regardless, educating people and advocating for people in their health is just kind of like in my bones. And I will,
Yeah.
do that for forever, no matter what my job is. So that
How
was a
much?
very long-winded story, but that's
No,
that's
it's
kind of where I am.
well, it hits all the spots, doesn't it? I mean, it's like most people who get into this space usually have a background in another area of the medical field, don't they? So it's kind of like it's interesting how people end up in this space because, like you said, the Victory is a looks like an absolutely incredible sort of business and clinics that they've got there. How much was the change moving from the rehab area to what, sort of working with Victory and learning all that stuff? Was it, I found leaving general practice to do men's health, TRT and things like that, you almost had to relearn some things about health and even things about nutrition that you don't really learn too much at training or medical school about. Things like, what you could say about cholesterol management, all of these things, you almost have to rewire your brain a little bit. And I was like you, because I took, there's a lot of YouTube, there's a lot of, like you say, studies, research, and you kind of end up having to kind of merge all of that into what the way you want to sort of educate or the way that you want to practice. Because at the end of the day, even well-respected physicians in this space, we all do things a little bit differently sometimes. There's usually some things that we all don't
Yeah.
do, but there's some things that we all kind of maybe slightly disagree on. How much did you how was it an interesting journey from going from rehab into the area of sort of like a more overall well-being, hormones and
Yeah.
everything like that?
Well, it's interesting because where I do agree in the sense that almost every practitioner or coach that I have worked with in the wellness optimization space is like retired from their traditional hospital system BS. They're fed up
Mhm.
with it. Like all the urologists I know were like you know, I can't do traditional urology anymore. Like, teach me something more. And, same with the general practitioner, same with the endocrinologist or what have you. Like, they're just sick of it. They move on to wellness. And there's so much unlearning. But interestingly, I wouldn't really like identify with that as much because, for one, I spent a very short time in cardiac pulmonary rehab. And so part of the reason I didn't keep pursuing that career is because I already had a preventative mindset and I already had like a wellness perspective on things. And that's actually why I didn't like cardiac pulmonary rehab. And so, where I didn't have like the formal training like I got when I entered into the men's health space, I still had those same ideals. And I never really bought into the traditional Western medicine BS. Like, I just never like, I always knew like something never felt right about it to me. And so I really am someone who, like, my base is wellness, and like my base is like kind of the education that I have gotten through, Victory and through doing men's health and preventative medicine. And so I definitely feel sometimes I get into conversations with like my friends or, different acquaintances that are still in kind of the normal traditional medical system. And I try to be as respectful as I can, but, like, for people who just refuse to see that there's a gray area, I have very little tolerance for because I
Yeah.
never was that. Like, I really never was that. I never bought into that. I never bought into, like, medication fixes everything and a
Yeah.
diagnosis is a death sentence. Like, I never bought into that. And so
Yeah.
I very thankfully, I think, have a bigger lens, I guess you would say, because I really didn't have to do much unlearning, which I'm very thankful for because I've been a part of people's journeys a lot of NPs, a lot of, different health coaches and things where I've been a part of their training and they have to unlearn. And it's like painful for me to watch.
Hmm.
Like, the unlearning that, estrogen is bad in men. My God, I've had that conversation 1,000 times and it gets more painful every time. Like,
Yeah.
just believe
Yeah.
me. Can we not do this heartache thing? Like, just believe what I say. Let's move on. And so I'm very thankful that really wasn't ever me. I got to just kind of like learn the right way from the beginning. Um,
Mhm.
but I have been a witness of exactly what you're asking in the unlearning portion of it. Um,
Yeah.
but really, one of the main reasons in specifically my role in cardiac rehab, the cardiologists that we worked with, which I'm sure they're brilliant at certain things, but like we'd have these weekly meetings on our patients and kind of collab on what they needed to be doing. And the cardiologist would approve of our plan. And the biggest red flag was they didn't want them doing resistance training. And that has been like kind of the back and forth argument between exercise physiologists and cardiologists for a very long time. And so we're talking like 15 years ago, or whatever, 14, 12, whatever, over a decade ago. And it
Mhm.
was really just when the transition started where cardiologists were buying into the fact that cardiac and pulmonary patients would benefit from resistance training. And so when I was in there, it was very much the transition phase, and the cardiologists still believed that cardiac, or that, cardio was the only acceptable method of getting these people better. And so,
Has that changed? Has
yes,
that changed in
yes.
the
So
the
so I was
the
in the
your
transition
opinion?
period, and they actually have
Right.
like a formally and officially changed the protocols where resistance training
Ah.
is a part of it. But that was like my biggest, I think, red flag at first, is because like we are presenting like bulletproof data, and the
Mm.
cardiologists are still refusing to
Mhm.
like believe that that's the right way. And I'm like, I don't know if I can be a part of it. Like, this is crazy. Like, this is just crazy. It was just bias. I mean, it was just historical bias. There was really no, and I'm sure you've seen it with GPs and other things. I mean, they're always, some people will have a historical bias that just doesn't like, it's not founded in data. And
Yeah.
even if you present the data to combat it, they still are refusing to believe it. And so, someone told me a very long time ago when I first started that it will always be harder to educate someone in the sense of them unlearning than to just teach them something to begin with. And I cannot agree with that anymore. Unlearning something by far is harder than learning it. And, that's where I got my first taste of just yikes, that is concerning, very concerning.
Well, I think it can hit your ego, can't it? If you know you've potentially been or accepting you've potentially been wrong for a long time. And it definitely does seem to be easier to start from a blanker slate rather than having to rub all of the chalk off and actually start to relearn some things. I think for me personally, it was a bit easier because I don't know if I always had a rebellious element against the whole sort of standard, sort of this medication for this disease, this medication for this disease. So maybe suited my personality to a little bit, but also my experience with hormones myself, with low testosterone and things. So it's kind of easier for me, but I definitely agree. I think it's easier to start from your end where you obviously kind of exercise and well-being sort of, you had that foundation. So what you've built upon is already a relevant foundation to everything else you're learning and sort of helping people with. So you mentioned about, was it a lot of things about sort of sexual health, lifestyle stuff? Is there a general rule for people who speak to you or consulted with you? Was there a general rule that everybody should do X, Y, and Z? So does everybody need to do resistance training, like cardio? Do you know what I mean? Sort of how would you approach each scenario?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, everyone is so different. And I would say that I always just start with what someone's already doing and what they're already comfortable doing, because that is the most realistic point of change. Like if someone is a runner and they come into my office and I say "Oh, you don't need to run anymore. Just start lifting 5 times a week." Like that is not going to land. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
or, if someone comes in and the first thing they disclose is "Hey, I know I need to be in a gym, but 2 years ago I was traumatized in a gym and this is what happened, blah, blah, blah." I'm not going to say, "Okay, then go to the gym." And so I think that so much of it is individualized, which brings me to, it just reiterates the point that there's so much missing in the normal healthcare system because it is so personalized. And
Mm.
the normal healthcare system is so um, protocol based, and protocols are very much important. And I think protocols absolutely have their place, and they are like a map and they're a guideline. But protocols are not the end all be all. Like not every person is going to follow this protocol that was set up. And that goes for medication, it goes for diet, it goes for lifestyle, it goes for, even ordering labs. Like there's protocols for that. I'm like, why are we waiting for a reflex on a high glucose to run an A1C? Just run the A1C. It's a $6 test. Like, what are we waiting on? And
Hmm.
so to me, I think protocols are a guideline and a map, but they're not the end all be all. And that is exactly what I follow when I'm teaching people. If someone is, diet is another example. If they come in and say, and let's say they have hyperlipidemia, like their lipid panel is off the chart, they're pre-diabetic, they definitely have fat to lose, uh, and they're eating just absolute a wild diet, gas station food all day, soda all day, smoking, or whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
It would be very unwise for me to say, "Okay, starting next week, you're gonna stop smoking and make all your meals at home and blah." No, I'm gonna work with that person. If you're having 20 cigarettes in a week, we're gonna try to get it down to 15. If you're eating gas station food for 3 meals a day, you're gonna limit it to 2 meals a day. If
Hmm.
you're, a truck driver, that's one here in our area, that's a huge industry that is just wildly unhealthy. Like I said, I live right by the river, and there's a river that runs the whole country. And so we have a ton of truck drivers. There's barges and they get on the truck and da 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 da. So it's a huge industry around here. And that particular job, I have a lot of patience with that job. That's one where it's like, you got to get good at, if I'm going to see 15 patients in a week that have this same schedule and the same problems, and they're sedentary and they're only eating gas station food, it's now my responsibility to come up with things that work for those people. I've never been a
Mm.
truck driver, nor will I ever be. That sounds terrible, but it's like it's asking questions. Okay, if I make this recommendation, how likely are you to do that with how your schedule works? How likely are you to actually do this thing or this thing? And you start to get feedback. And then another guy that has a similar situation, I can apply what I learned from guy number one to guy number two because they have a very similar schedule and very similar issues. And so it's a lot of asking, like, what's actually something that you can do? I know that you need to be eating X amount of protein, and I know that you need to stop drinking soda, but I also know that you're not going to do that. So, what is the next best thing? Is
Mm.
it that you switch to zero sugar soda? Is it that we decrease the volume of soda? Is it that you switch to a different kind that is less calories or less sugar? Um, is there another drink that you would be happy to have and it wouldn't feel like restriction? Okay, so those are the questions that I would ask. I mean, that's exactly what I would say. Here's
Yeah.
our options. You're going to lower the volume, you're going to change the type, or we're going to switch to something different. What out of those options seems the most like excited for you to do? Like, what's the thing that out of those options would you actually do? And then, 3, 4 months later, I say, hey, do this and do it to the best of your ability. And when we see you back, we're going to see how things have changed, not only in your labs, but your symptoms, your body composition, etc. And then we're going to go for the next tier of change, right? So if you handled cutting your soda from 6 a day to 3 a day and that went well, okay, maybe let's consider cutting it out next time if that is an option. But just because on day one I know the best option, that doesn't mean that that's going to be my recommendation, because that's not, compliance in the patient's participation is by far the most important thing. I could have every single perfect plan in the world, but if the person's not going to do it, I'm just wasting my time and theirs.
Yeah.
I kind of went off on a tangent, but hopefully that answered your question.
No, and it's a good patient group to talk about because I get a few truck driver patients, and it's about, like you said, it's working at what you can improve in a stepwise approach, and that applies to so many people doing shift work, people doing, like you say, long traveling for their journey. They're not all going to get in the gym 5 times a week to lift weights for an hour or so. They're not all going to be able to go for multiple cardio sessions. They're not going to be able to, they're not all going to go from doing exactly what you said to doing meal prep and and not drinking any soda ever again and all of these things. So it's about meeting them where they start, really, and it's about sort of stepwise
Yeah.
improvement, isn't it, at the end of the day?
It's interesting too with truck drivers because I have found one of the things that works pretty well for them, and I think every patient that I've had that like does this actually can do it, is they're like required to stop a certain amount of times. Like they can't drive through. So like if they stop for bathroom breaks or for food breaks or whatever, I have them walk around the building for 10 minutes. And
Mm-hmm.
so like that was usually my only exercise recommendation for those guys. If you're going to work 6 days a week and you have to stop 4 times during your journey, now you've gotten 40 minutes of, low intensity steady state cardio because you've walked. And for a lot of those guys, 10 to 15 minutes is like a good amount because they're used to
Yeah.
sitting. And so, whereas for someone like, me or you, that probably wouldn't be much of an adaptation, but for them it is. And so I usually would start by that recommendation. When you stop for your break, one is I would have them pack their lunches. Usually, like if you can avoid getting gas station food, even if you're getting prepackaged food from home, buy it all in bulk from Costco or whatever, have it at home and bring it with you instead of going in and purchasing. What that
Mm.
does is now we've elevated the types of food you're eating and you've planned it ahead of time, which is great. And we've saved you time because you don't have to go in and order and pay and wait. So during that time, you've eaten in the truck and now you're walking during what normally would be a food break.
Yeah.
And so that
And
is,
you've saved money as well.
yeah, for
You've
sure. And
saved
so
money as well. Yeah.
those are the avenues, right? Like to me, being a health coach or even like a practitioner, you're not good if you just follow these like cookie cutter guidelines, because there's always a good, better, best. And then there's always things that fit into other people's lifestyle. If I had this patient who I said, okay, you're going to walk for 40 minutes a day and pack cheese sticks and deli meat, whatever, that could be an immense benefit to that person. And that could actually be an immense downgrade for this person over here. That would be a terrible recommendation for someone else, you know? And so I think it's all about meeting the person where they are and also kind of explaining, right? So that's another thing I didn't mention. If I'm going to tell someone, hey, the best course of action, in my opinion, because you've told me that you can make these changes, is to walk on your breaks, to pack this for lunch, blah, 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 and to only drink 3 sodas a day. Okay. I'm also coming in with a disclaimer that, hey, that's not where I want you to be eventually, but that's where I want you to be in 3 months. So this is going to be a journey. This is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. Like, this isn't the answer forever, but we're going to see how you do with XYZ change. And then we're going to progress from there. Cause I don't ever want someone to feel shame in the recommendation. Like, well, she's not giving me the best recommendation because I'm too far away from that. Like, I don't want them to feel that, but I also don't want them to feel like, oh yeah, this is easy. I can do this. Is not, that's not bad at all. I'm like, yeah, well, just wait. And so I usually try to give them a caveat like, hey, this is a good plan for now, but this isn't probably the best. So let's just see how you do, and then we can go from there. Because you always want to set up realistic expectations, and I don't ever want someone to think that, like, you know, you're just giving them an easy way out. But some changes are very, very hard for people, especially people that are set in their ways and they've done the same. Like, routine people are the worst.
Yeah.
Because if they've had the same breakfast and the same, you know, lunch spot for 50 years, and you're trying to suggest that they change something, I mean, it might sound trivial to some people and it might sound silly and like, oh, they're just being lazy and they don't have any kind of, you know, grit, and they don't have any kind of hard work. I'm like, no, like, a lot of people build their identities into these things. Like, it's way deeper than just a soda or a certain lunch spot. Like, they know the server at their favorite lunch spot, and the server knows what they're going to order before they sit down. And they, you know, they bought Christmas presents for that server's kid because they love them so much. And that's a part of who they are. Like, that's more than just asking them to choose something different for lunch. Like, for them, it goes deeper. And so I think you have to identify that in some people. Some people have that and they really are connected to their habits, and they really are emotionally like intertwined with their lifestyle and their diet habits, and other people aren't. And I think it's, again, part of being a good practitioner or a good coach or what have you is being able to identify those things. Like, what is an emotional trigger for someone? What is an acceptable change for them? What would be too much? What would push them over the edge and make them give up? You have to help them by like having those conversations and discerning, like, ooh, that was a touchy subject. Like, maybe let's not address that part right now, and let's address another part right now.
Yeah.
I feel the same about smoking. You know, when people are smokers, I will always, and any of my patients could tell you, if they're a smoker and they're sitting across from me, the first question I'm going to ask is, all right, so I see here you're a smoker. Where are you at with that? Do you want to quit? Do you not want to quit? Have you tried to quit? Are you completely against quitting? And I just straight up, I mean, I'm not going to fudge around it. Like, just tell me. And they'll say, like, I've tried before. Right now, I'm not in a season where I feel comfortable trying to quit. I'm like, okay. Do you feel comfortable trying to decrease? And they'll be like, yeah, maybe. Okay. And then you go with that information. Like, it's not my job to make them do or be something they don't want to be, but it's also, you know, your job, and when you're in that position, to encourage them. And so I feel like there's just a fine line of like what's appropriate to recommend and what's not. And I always start by asking questions rather than just saying, you know.
Yeah. Well, you've said really good points there. One about like sort of the individualization for the person in front of you and getting to know them as well. That's so key to doing a good job, isn't it? Is actually, right, so why are these habits ingrained? How significant are these habits to your, like you say, almost your identity? But then also about making stepwise approaches rather than sort of chucking someone off a cliff and being like, you've got to go from here to here, otherwise you're screwed in the next few weeks. But
Yeah.
I think some of
people
those steps are massive as well. You know, like you said about the walking. I mean, going from 0 steps to, you know, a couple of thousand is actually quite a big change in long-term health, let alone the next step beyond that after you've made that initial change.
Yes. And one thing that I think people and I would say that the general population is very guilty of this. They will give up before they have had the chance to reap the benefits. And
Mm.
the reason why I find that to be so important, not because you're just doing it longer and you have a longer chance of getting health benefits from it, that's part of it. But part of it is because the feeling the benefit and feeling the symptom management. And what I mean by that is getting better energy, your knees hurt less, you're getting less headaches or whatever. Your sleep is better, your sex is better, etc. You then get motivation to continue. And so now the motivation is not coming from me, and it's not coming from your doctor, and it's not coming from just like these external, I want my labs to be better or whatever. This is coming from just a pure and genuine sense of, oh wow, that made me feel better. And so then it becomes an internal and intrinsic motivation that I could never have provided somebody. And so I want them to stick with it long enough to reap the benefit to where they feel the worthiness of continuing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that's the part where I get with some people, I'll give them a timeline, like, please, like, hey, you have, like, if you, and now if it's a severe health concern, it's like, I might not be as wiggle roomy with them, like,
Yeah.
hey, we can't wait 6 months to stop the soda. You need to stop the soda now because you are going to go in a diabetic coma. Like, this is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, I will usually give them a timeline because people often can do things when they know that there's an end date. And so I'll say, hey, for 45 days, you got to do this and you have to do it. No exceptions, no cheating. You're going to check in. I usually would like set reminders to check in with them or like have some kind of like accountability process. But if it's something like that and someone is counting 45 days or 30 days or whatever, is medically appropriate, they can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I can do this. Like, even if it sucks, it's for my health. I can do this. I have, signed up for this and I'm ready to do it. And they see like an end date. And even if they choose to never have soda again or never drink alcohol again, it doesn't matter because thinking about forever is way too overwhelming for people. But thinking about it like week by week or day by day, or hey, for the month of May, I'm not doing this. That is so much more digestible for people. And then, like I was saying, by the end of it, they have felt the benefit. And then they don't want to do it because I asked them to. They want to do it because they feel better. And so it's kind of like this, you have to like try to learn how people tick, but that's one little trick that I, even for myself, like I do so much better without gluten, but I love pasta and I love, there's certain things that I love. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'll do that even to myself. I'll say, hey, I've gotten a little carried away. I've noticed my bloat is like coming back. My gut health isn't as good as it is when I'm not having gluten. So, hey, for 30 days, I'm going to do no exceptions, no cheating, just 100% no gluten. And then it triggers me to remember, oh, this is why, because I feel so much better. And so it doesn't work for just certain people. I mean, I pretty much think a lot of those things work for everyone, even for someone who knows the science behind it. But that's really
Getting
what
getting
I
to the point,
I
getting
like
to
to.
the point where you feel the improvement becomes the motivation is so key, isn't it? But it doesn't. The problem is it's kind of like you said about having that committing to a certain point, that time scale where if you've done it for, like say, a month or and a half, 2 months, then the person is able to recognize, hold on a minute, I do have more energy. I do feel, a better libido. I do feel that my body's working better for me. And then it's almost like you get them hooked, isn't it? It's like
Yeah,
a lot of exercise regimes is as soon as you get into that feedback loop where it feels good and it makes you feel better, that's, the key. And everyone has like off times, like you said, you might dabble with pasta again and then you realize actually no, I feel better if I cut it out for a
yeah,
while. But it's just that key is actually saying
yeah,
like, I'm telling you to do this because it's going to help your health, but actually if you get into the habit of it, you will feel the benefit of it. And that's where the
yeah,
TRT stuff comes in as well, because
yep,
the sort of frustration with TRT sometimes is it's an incredible treatment. I can attest to that. But if you don't work with it and get into good routines as well, there's always going to be limitations to it. It's always going to, you're leaving improvements sort of not taken really, or not got.
Yeah. So Dave Lee, who I know we both know his work, he is just a brilliant mind. If anyone's interested in TRT, Dave Lee is someone I highly suggest looking up his work. But he always says his little favorite tagline is TRT will only give you the benefits you deserve. And I love that. And it's so true. And it applies to so many things, but especially with like hormone regulation. And one thing, and I haven't even mentioned it yet because we wouldn't even have enough time in the day, is diabetes. I'm very, very passionate about diabetes, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Like I'm almost maybe too, like someone come in with a A1C in the high sevens, and I'm like, you want to try to do this naturally? Because if you commit, we can get you to do it with no medication. And it's true though. Like people don't understand like the buy-in of type 2 diabetes is not a diagnosis that you have to live with forever. And I cannot stand, especially when doctors frame it that way. Type 2 diabetes can be fixed. And I'm so passionate about people understanding that. Now, some people, if you've been type 2 diabetic for so long and it hasn't been treated, yeah, it's going to be a long journey to correct it. But if you just are teetering into like a 7% A1C or high sixes or whatever, for most people, if you are committed enough, you can fix it. Now, maybe should you start with some medication to jumpstart or whatever? Sure, case by case, but it can be fixed. It can be reversed. You don't have to be on it forever. Same with high cholesterol. Like some people think it's like gloom and doom. Like, oh, I have high cholesterol, I'm going to have it forever. It's like, no, that does not have to be the case. And so whatever, I told you, I feel very passionately about that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But
I
that's
agree.
kind of the same point is you can give someone say a GLP-1, which is one of my favorites, especially for someone who's like just newly diabetic or pre-diabetic or whatever. Start them on a GLP-1 and say, okay, in 6 months or in 1 year or whatever, we'll be monitoring monthly or every other month or whatever. But this will be an end date. You're going, your body composition is going to change. Your insulin resistance is going to change. Your diet is going to change. And as long as you're committed mentally, emotionally, physically to this plan, absolutely. In 12 months, 18 months, you could probably come off everything and maintain with lifestyle. And I've seen that dozens, hundreds of times where people can do that. And along the way, magically, they're better and their brain starts to work better and their kids like them better and they're not so moody. It's like, crazy how that happens,
Yeah. Well, it's that mindset, and this is part of why I left general practice, of this idea of it's almost like a passive approach to your health, and it was kind of supported and promoted by the doctor end of the equation, which was, here's your diagnosis, here's your pill. And really, in reality, medication, like you said, has a good roles in times, but you've got to sort of inspire people to take control and actually say, look, this is what's happening now, but we can reverse it if you commit alongside what I can give you to get a better result. And actually, in a year's time, 2 years time, like you said, you could be looking at a very different health picture and sense of well-being. It's crazy. It's very frustrating. I can see why you get passionate about it, because it's that passive sort of acceptance that frustrates me, I think.
Were you like a general practitioner? Is that your like family medicine, or what's your?
Yeah, I was a family med
Yeah.
general practitioner for like 10 years. So I had low testosterone myself, ended up on TRT about four odd years ago, and that's what inspired my journey. You know yourself, when you're getting into sort of one arm of the well-being and health optimization space, you tend to then get exposed to the rest of it. So my original exposure was testosterone, and then from there it's been, like a bit of red pilling, I would say, for a lot of the other aspects of health and well-being. So that's how I got into it. Yeah.
Well, it's hard not to become obsessed, I think. I mean, my personality is kind of obsessive anyway. Like once I love something and know something, I gotta know more. I gotta do more. I gotta understand more. But it really is like that in general, because it's like, oh, this is cool. You can fix this with this. You can do this with this. It's like you just have to know the right pieces to put together. One thing I was going to say too is general practitioners and like the typical sick care system is what I like to call it, because that is what it is. Like if you're in the US and you get a gunshot wound or you're in a car wreck, you are in no better place. The US can fix you right up. But then once you're all fixed up, they're not going to help you feel well, you know? And so there is definitely a place for the standard sick care system. Like if you have cancer or like a, you know, a true illness,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
especially in the US, is a beautiful place to be. I mean, we have some of the most brilliant surgeons and physicians in that regard, but it's like your typical everyday person suffering from like hormone deficiency, thyroid dysfunction, obesity. There's not a good place in the sick care system for the vast majority of those people. But one thing that I like to say is one way I think that we can get better, and I'm hoping this is the bridge that we start to see in developed countries, you know, like, you know, in Europe and here in the US, is I don't expect every single general practitioner to learn nutrition and to become a nutritionist and to learn exercise and to become an exercise specialist to prescribe exercise. I don't expect that. What I would like to see and what I think is reasonable in our lifetime is to have them more often refer out to those professionals. And that's where the missing link is happening. Like I don't want your general you know, PCP to be able to give you a diet plan. I know that's not realistic. I know they don't have enough time to do that. And I know that it would be asking a lot for them to seek that additional education. But what I would like to see is when they're treating you for, let's say, high blood pressure and sleep apnea, then they know you need to lose weight, but they're just saying, oh, diet and exercise. I would
Mm-hmm.
like them to not leave it at that. I would like them to say, okay, here's the partnering office we work with, and they do exercise and diet prescription, and I'm going to send you there next week. Here's your appointment date. That's what I would like to see, because I don't think it's fair to say every single doctor needs to know every single thing about lifestyle. No, they are doctors and they need to specialize in medicine and diagnoses and reading labs, et cetera, et cetera. But they know when someone needs additional support. It's just
Yeah.
not set up right now for people to get that support. And so what I'm hoping we see again in our lifetime, and hopefully sooner than later, is where they're really using those resources like dietitians, nutritionists, fitness coaches as referrals in an official capacity, not just like, oh, hey, my buddy does this. You can find him on Google. Like I really would love to see it streamlined to where it's like, this is a referral. Like you are going to see this dietitian for X amount of time, and then you're going to see me back and we're going to check your labs again. So, you know, I do get frustrated with the system, but I'm really hoping, and that's where I get excited seeing like people like you around the world and events like the Silverback Summit and what Allie's doing. I'm just hoping to get that bridge closed up a little bit, because
Yeah.
it's really frustrating, and I do think it's possible for people to get the help they need. It's just you got to have people advocating and people sending people in the right way, because they don't know. You can't expect every single like just average Joe Schmo to know what to do. I mean, that's crazy. And especially for myself, like being around the fitness and wellness industry and just always being passionate about it myself, I do tend to lose sight of that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you don't know that that's not a good choice. But people really don't know. They just genuinely don't know. I last little tidbit on that is I had somebody, an acquaintance, just kind of a friend of a friend, talking about how she had sleep apnea, and she's a pretty big girl, and has a lot of fat around her neck and chest area, and was really upset about the diagnosis of sleep apnea, but was happy to get a CPAP because she's sleeping better, of course, because those
Mhm.
are, you know,
Yeah.
life changing for people who genuinely have sleep apnea, but
They're
not
as good as
once.
they're as good as TRT, aren't they? I think,
Yes,
they're
yes,
a game
yes,
changer.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But never once was it mentioned to her to like, you know, seek out any kind of help for, you know, reversing her sleep apnea by losing body fat. And so I just get kind of frustrated with that type of stuff. And of course, it, it honestly wasn't the time or place for me to have that conversation with her. But I was like, man, this would have been a perfect opportunity to say, like, hey, you can get a sleep a CPAP machine. Let's try it for X amount of time. But during that time, let's see if we can't get your body weight down just a little bit and see if that helps your natural ability to breathe while you sleep. But no, not a single mention of it. I can pretty much assure by the way she was telling the story, she had no idea that it was just this like gloom and doom diagnosis, like, oh, this happened to me. And now I'm stuck with it. And like, oh my gosh, they completely did you a disservice, because if you don't want to wear this CPAP forever and you don't want to pay for the maintenance and the new things and blah, 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 you might not have to. If you would be able to lose about 40 pounds of fat, you might not have sleep apnea anymore. And I could just tell she had no idea. And that's the kind of stuff that's why I get excited that people do things in the medical, I'm sorry, the preventative and the wellness space, because the more people that know about it, the better off everyone is going to be.
And I think you mentioned a good point there as well, because you can always assume knowledge that people don't have, particularly when you work in this space where, we could debate like the best diet or the best nutrition and the role of carnivore versus like veganism and all of this sort of stuff. Whereas a lot of people don't actually know, you should be doing resistance training. You should be hitting this amount of protein. You should be doing X, Y, and Z. A lot of people just assume kind of, if I just live a relatively normal existence for the Western world, then I'm going to remain healthy and hopefully get into my 80s or 90s. And it's like, no, like there's a lot of like foundational knowledge that is lacking here. And sometimes in this space, because, we all meet up and we have conversations about, more kind of like, I suppose, the edges of like, what does LDL mean? Do we really think LDL is as bad as, you can debate certain areas, but actually a lot of people just need to actually learn the basics of what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And that can sometimes be assumed knowledge. And that's an error sometimes. Some people come in and they're like biohackers. Patients like they take 15 supplements. They've got their macros all dialed out. They've got 12% body fat and they're all dialed in, and they've kind of got as much education as you in certain areas of health. But the other end of the scale is still probably by far the most common, avatar out there, which is very little knowledge of nutrition, diet. And a lot of doctors don't, I can attest to it. They don't know this sort of nutrition stuff in detail. Like you said as well, that's where the I call it like the MDT holistic approach, using coaches, using, if it's a nutritionist, potentially, a strength and conditioning coach, all of these things is really how you get the optimal outcome at the end of the day.
Yeah, I noticed too, like in this space, especially the silverback group, like of coaches and trainers, a lot of them will train that avatar. So like people who are already fit and they're really just trying to dial in. And that's great, because those people definitely, like, it's hard when you already know a lot to like push yourself to the next level with coach. And so I very much like get that relationship. But my heart is definitely with the majority who like know nothing. I mean, that's really where I try to help those people the most. I think when I go over the equation with people of how much protein they should be eating, that conversation alone typically is so shocking to people. Because I usually start by just a simple equation and kind of get a range of protein that I would want them at. And then we go through a couple of their days and actually count and get a number of where they're currently at. And they like usually want to fall out of their chair. Like, are you joking? And so again, you have to take it slow. Hey, if you need 150, we're going to start by trying to hit 100 because you're only getting 60 right now.
Yeah.
And so, but that equation alone typically shocks people, and they're like, oh my gosh. But yeah, if you don't know anything, it's easy to be shocked by that information. And so it takes a lot of patience and it takes a lot of time. And I think, if anyone listening is in that situation where you want to change your health and like you're just not, you just don't know what to do, I think that understanding it does not have to be all or nothing. Something is better than nothing. And so I think that it's a common thing. Like, I don't know what to do for exercise. I don't know. So let me just keep eating off the rails. No, you're better off to, if you're not going to exercise because you don't know what to do, okay, table that. But let's just start eating whole foods.
Mhm.
Ditch the processed foods for a few weeks and see how that goes. Or increase your water, or just take a walk every morning. I mean, there's such low hanging fruit that people can do. And I think that people try so hard to, oh, I saw this supplement on TikTok and I saw this diet on Instagram and maybe I'll do this. No, let's just, where are you at? And what's a little bit better than that? And I think that people get lost in the sauce on like all this information, but it is so just basic. It's so basic. Like, yes, some people are very far along in their fitness journey and their health is perfect on paper and they want to lose 2% body fat and they're going to get super super in depth, and that's fine for those people. But for the vast majority, it's just a matter of making a small adaptation over time. If you're not walking now, start walking. If you're drinking soda, switch some of it for water. If you're, getting 4 hours of sleep, try to up it to 5.5 and then go to 6. And so there's very, very low hanging fruit. And I think people get this idea that they have to just be doing everything perfect or else it's just a waste of their time. They may as well not do anything.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
one small step, one small adaptation is enough to get you started. And then, yes, you might want to seek out coaching. You may want to speak to a doctor or a dietitian or a fitness coach or whatever eventually. But like, if you're ready to start now and you are sick of feeling sick, sick and tired, of feeling sick and tired, and you want to lose a little weight and you want to feel better and have more energy for your kids, you can just start now, right now, today. Drink a little more water, go on a walk, all those little things. Choose, to make your meal at home rather than swinging through and picking something up. There's so many small things that people can do to get started. And I think that the information overwhelm is so much for certain people, and it just doesn't have to be. So that's really where I try to encourage people, just baby steps. And as long as you stay committed and keep doing more baby steps, eventually you're going to get to bigger strides, and like, you're going to be an expert before long. But it does take time and it takes a foundation.
Yeah. And what's key to know as well is that making those small steps is often what predicts or reduces mortality and increases or reduces morbidity as well. Like going from very few steps to a couple of thousand steps and going from all processed to, more whole foods and things like that. That's where almost like the biggest levers are. And then you stack on top of that. And that's where you get the amazing results in the long term with good commitment. But it
Yeah.
starts, it's baby steps, isn't it? It's like you're saying, it's kind of like your stepwise approach. Don't sort of get paralysis from over analysis. You go online and you think, I don't know if
Yes.
I should
Yes.
do
100%.
this extreme diet or these 10 supplements. And it's just like, well, maybe just start with the basics first. And that can be a real game changer.
Yes. And I like personally love lifting. Like, I lift heavy. I love lifting. I hate cardio. Like, that's my biggest challenge is like, hey, you lift
Yeah.
enough, girlfriend. You need to start doing something else. But I will tell you, my physique in the way I feel mentally and physically is always better when I walk more. And I'm not saying, yes, walking in conjunction with lifting is great, but like, even if I sacrificed lifting for a couple weeks and just walked more, I feel better and I look better. I know as soon as I start slacking on my walking, my mental health isn't as good, my physical health isn't as
Mhm.
good, my belly starts to feel a little more puffy. And so I know there's so much research, but I do think like walking, and another shout out to another silverback guy, Mike Dulce. He
Mhm.
is brilliant. And I would highly recommend following him on Instagram. He's a little in your face, but he's so awesome and so wise. But he preaches and preaches and preaches LISS, low intensity, steady state
Yeah.
cardio. And I always joke like that's the thing I fail at. And that's actually like the easiest thing to do. But it's the thing I personally fail at. And I recommend people start with that because it's so helpful for, like you said, just longevity and your health in general. You might see like me doing a hit workout, doing hang cleans and deadlifts and whatever. It's like, whoa, that looks crazy. But in reality, I think that actually walking every single day helps me more than that does in some capacity. And so it doesn't always have to be as intense or as scary as people make it out to be. Just like making a step and doing something is better than doing nothing. And so, yeah, that's what I got.
Oh, 100%. Changing my career, part of the big thing was not working in an office anymore. I just get more walking in, and I've definitely noticed a change, like exactly like you described. I mean, I was still exercising before regularly, but actually just having that low intensity stuff, I think can be a real game changer mentally, physically. And I think you just feel better in yourself if you get more baseline activity in.
Do you
So
live do you live in an area where you can like walk to places?
yes, yeah, you can. Yeah, it's a
I
bit of a
always love that
bit of a
about, like, any place
dodgy
that, like, I've
country
seen
lane.
movies, like, in Europe or whatever, anywhere, like, in the UK, there's, like, these little coffee shops you can walk to and, like, they here, everything's spread out by, like, 10 cornfields, so you kinda gotta, like, drive
Oh
everywhere.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I always have envied that. I've never actually been anywhere in Europe, so I don't know other than what I see on TV, but it always seems like there's these, like, cute little gardens and patios and people can walk around, which I envy for sure.
Oh, it's just a size thing, isn't it? I mean, America's so much bigger than the UK, for example. I think the UK fits I may be completely wrong here, but I think it fits into Texas something like 4 times.
Oh
So
my gosh, for real?
I may be completely, but it's a lot bigger. That may be an incorrect, so no one quote me on that, but I seem to remember that.
Oh,
England
yeah.
might fit into Texas, you know. So like for us, like I always find it joke when or laugh when I speak to sort of people who live in America because like for me a long drive is like 2 hours, whereas for someone who lives in the States that can just be going to a friend's house because you are so much more widely spread out.
Yeah,
It's a different world. Yeah.
I went to my friend's house last weekend, it's an hour or I'm sorry, 2 hours, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can get
2
across
hours there, 2
like
hours back.
you can nearly go across the east to west in maybe 4 hours here. So it's a different ballpark.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you get more steps in, so that's good.
Yeah, yeah, true. So
I love
lastly, just tell people where they can find and maybe mention the candle and skincare because I like this sort of thing because I think when I started learning more about hormones is and we went as a household kind of went on a bit of a clear out thing about actually trying to get self-care products and stuff that don't wreck your hormones. So
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
tell us a little bit
So
about that.
yeah, well, you can find me, Instagram is, like, where I'm most, active, and if I'm ever doing honestly, for people who have quick questions, this is not my business, consulting is not my business, so I just, like, help people in DMs for free. Maybe that'll change one day, but for now, if you have lifestyle questions or whatever, feel free to message me. It's just Allison Hill on Instagram. The only thing is the O is a 0 because, the other handle was taken. So it's Allison Hill. The O is a 0. That's
Mhm.
probably the quickest way to just chit chat if you have questions about anything I've said here. My candle business, though, I had my first home had all white furniture. I had all these candles just from the store, and it was making all my furniture black. And I was like, what is in these that's making everything black? It reminded me of like a smoker's home that everything's yellow. It was like everything was turning black. So I did all this research, of course, as I've mentioned, I'm quite the nerd. If I want to know something, I just learn it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to make my own candles with the ingredients that I feel safe with. Well,
Mhm.
that turned into candle ingredients are expensive unless you're buying them in bulk. Well, they're still expensive, but I was like, well, if I buy them in bulk, I can make them and sell them. And so,
Mhm.
again, that entrepreneurial spirit is pretty hot and heavy over here. So I did that, and then recently I've gotten into tallow skincare because really honestly just a good friend of mine who is super clean as far as using clean ingredients in her home. She asked me to make some because
Mhm.
having all the equipment to make candles, I pretty much had all the things I needed to make tallow. And I started doing that and then using it. And I don't know if you can tell my face today, but it has
Yeah.
dramatically changed my skin. Some of my best friends are using it on their kids who have horrible eczema. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is definitely a business opportunity. And I need to like start making this and really perfecting my recipes. And so, yeah, I make skincare, mostly moisturizer with 100% like completely natural, like stuff you could just even eat, like things that are
Yeah.
so clean and so healthy and so safe that you can even eat them. And so, yeah, that's where I evolved. So I have that going on. And like I said, I still very much like care about wellness and diet and lifestyle. And so that's kind of where I use my platform on Instagram and with my podcast to do that. Something we didn't talk about here too is addiction. That's another area of health that I'm extremely passionate about in recovery and overcoming addiction. And so, yeah, if anyone's interested in that, that's where you would find me on my podcast, which is Fit for Freedom with Allie. And I definitely have a lot of big dreams and goals with that, because again, educating is something that I just feel very passionate about. And podcast is just a very great way to do that. So, yeah, so you can find me.
And I highly recommend the podcast. I've been listening as I've been jogging over the last couple of days in preparation for the podcast, and I was enjoying it. There's, like you said about the addiction stuff, that's hard hitting stuff, but I think it's going to be helpful for a lot of people out there, because again, very common ailment of all sorts of addiction out there, really. Yeah,
absolutely. And people who aren't even in substance addiction, it really crosses over with food, and even just like addictions with bad habits. I think that some people, even if you don't want to title it, the knowledge can still be helpful. Like there's a lot of crossover. And I think that we have become, especially here in the US, this is a very obsessed nation, like very obsessive behavior. And so even if you're not like a raging drug addict or what have you, there's still so much that can be enlightening, I think, with learning about recovering from obsessive behaviors. So yeah.
lovely. Well, thank you for joining us on the podcast today. It's been excellent. It's been really enjoyable, and I hope a lot of people found it helpful.
Thank you so much.
Check out Ali's stuff, as she said, Instagram, Fit for Freedom podcast, and the candle and skincare company.
Thank you. Sorry we went a bit over time, but it's been a pleasure, and I really love chatting with you.
It's a good sign.
Thank you.